They told me I wasn't welcome in the house I paid for, the house with my name still written on the deed. That night, I stood in the rain, drenched, humiliated, and invisible to the very family I had sacrificed everything for. But as the storm poured down on me, I smiled. Because I knew tomorrow, the ones who locked me out would face the truth. And by the end of it, they wouldn't be celebrating in my house anymore. They would be packing their bags. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my life, I believed sacrifice was just another word for love. I raised my son, Daniel, alone after my husband passed far too soon. I cleaned offices, baked bread for neighbors, even took night shifts at the laundry. Also, my boy would never feel the weight of poverty pressing on his shoulders. He was my pride, my only reason to push forward when my body begged me to stop. It had been 3 long months since I last saw my grandson, Noah. That little boy was the joy of my aging years, the bright spark that kept me going on gray mornings. So when the phone rang one Friday morning and Daniel's voice came through, soft and sweet, I felt my heart lift in a way it hadn't in months. "Mom, come over tonight for dinner," he said. "We really want to see you. Be here by 6. I smiled so wide I thought my face would split. I could almost picture his boyish grin on the other end of the line. Just a few words, and I felt 10 years younger. I held the phone to my chest after we hung up, whispering, "Thank you, God. Tonight I get to be with my family." The rest of the day, I busied myself like a girl preparing for her first dance. I ironed my maroon dress, the one that always made me feel just a little elegant despite my wrinkles. Around my neck, I clasped the pearls that once belonged to my mother. A touch of French perfume, bought years ago on clearance but saved for special moments, finished the look. Tonight wasn't just dinner. It was a chance to remind myself I still mattered. But I didn't come empty-handed. I never did. I stopped by the toy store downtown and bought the newest building set Noah had begged for during our last phone call. From there, I walked to the bakery and bought a box of delicate lemon tarts, Caroline's favorite. My daughter-in-law never thanked me much, but I always tried. My arms ached carrying the bags, but my heart was light. On the bus ride across town, I pressed my forehead against the glass and watched the city pass in streaks of gold and gray. The ride was nearly an hour, but I didn't mind. I imagined Noah's little face lighting up when he tore the wrapping paper from his gift. I pictured Daniel giving me that familiar half-smile he'd had since boyhood. And Caroline, perhaps tonight she'd look at me with warmth instead of cool politeness. The air outside smelled of autumn when I stepped off at their stop. A crisp October evening, the kind of night that makes you feel alive. My heart fluttered as I walked the 4 blocks to their house. Every step brought me closer to what I thought would be laughter, family, belonging. I paused at the front gate, adjusting my hair, balancing the gift bags in my arms. The house looked beautiful in the OEI. Golden porch light, white trim, tidy hedges, a home I had helped make possible with my savings. Pride swelled in me. My sacrifices had not been in vain, I told myself. At exactly 6 o'clock, I rang the bell, smiling in anticipation. I had no idea that smile would soon fade into something I would never forget. The door creaked open, and there she was. Caroline, my daughter-in-law. She looked stunning in a black dress I had bought her just a month earlier for her birthday. Her lips curled into a smile, but it was the kind of smile that hides more than it reveals. "Oh, Helen," she said, her tone clipped, almost rehearsed. You came. Her eyes flickered to the bags in my arms, then quickly darted back toward the dining room behind her. I could hear laughter, the clinking of glasses, the unmistakable sound of a feast in progress. My heart leapt, ready to step inside, to hand her the pastries she loved so much. Yes, I replied warmly. Daniel invited me. I brought some treats for everyone. Caroline's smile stiffened. Well, this is a little awkward. We have guests tonight. Guests? My son had invited me himself, his voice soft and insistent on the phone that morning. I shifted the bags in my hands, confused. But Daniel said, Just wait here a moment, please, she interrupted, her polished nails tightening on the edge of the door. I'll speak to him. Before I could respond, the door clicked shut in my face. The smile I'd been carrying since morning slipped away. I stood there on the porch, balancing the gifts, feeling the cool October air prickle my skin. From inside, laughter grew louder. A burst of clinking silverware rang out. The aroma of roasted meat wafted through the window, rich and inviting. Yet I, the woman who had worked her hands raw to help them buy this very house, was left outside, like an unwelcome salesman. I told myself it was a misunderstanding. Any second now, Daniel would open the door, embrace me, lead me to the table. I waited, adjusting my maroon dress, willing the unease away. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The weight of the gift bags dug into my wrists. Still no one came. I pressed the bell again. This time, Daniel appeared. My son, my pride. His eyes didn't light up when he saw me. Instead, he looked nervous, almost guilty. Mom, you're still here? He whispered, glancing over his shoulder. My throat tightened. Of course, Daniel. You invited me for dinner. I came early to see Noah. He shifted uncomfortably, his hand still gripping the door as if to block me. Things changed, Mom. Some of Caroline's friends came over unexpectedly. We don't really have enough food tonight. The word stung. Food. As though a plate of roast and potatoes couldn't stretch for one more serving. As though my presence was a burden. I tried again. But Daniel, I brought dessert. And Noah's gift. His eyes softened for a fraction of a second. But then Caroline's voice cut through from the dining room. Daniel, what's taking so long? We're waiting! His jaw tightened. He gave me a forced smile that felt like a stranger's. Maybe tomorrow, Mom. It's just complicated tonight. And then he closed the door, not gently, not apologetically, but with a firmness that told me I wasn't welcome. I stood frozen on the porch, staring at the polished wood of the door that had just shut me out. My son, the boy I had raised through sleepless nights and endless sacrifices, had chosen his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. The first drops of rain began to fall. They tapped against the porch light, soft at first, then faster. Within minutes, a steady drizzle turned into a downpour. Water trickled down my hair, seeped into the fabric of my maroon dress, plastering it to my skin. My shoes grew heavy with water, squelching with each small step. Inside, the laughter continued. Glasses clinked. Music played faintly in the background. I could almost hear Caroline's voice rising above the chatter. And me? I was nothing but a shadow in the rain, waiting on a porch that should have been my home. The rain fell harder, drumming against the porch roof as if mocking me. I shifted the gift bags in my arms, their paper handles digging into my fingers. My dress clung to my body, heavy with water, but I refused to leave. I pressed the doorbell again, hoping my son would open the door and realize what he was doing. At D. Last, the door cracked open. Daniel stood there, his hair slightly mussed, the glow of laughter spilling from behind him. I could see the dining table over his shoulder, wine glasses raised, plates brimming with food. For a fleeting second, hope fluttered in me. "Son," I said softly, "please, let me come in, just to dry off. You invited me, remember?" He hesitated, looking back toward the room filled with his wife's friends. Then he turned back, his face a mask of discomfort. "Mom, you should go home. This isn't a good night." I blinked, the words striking harder than the rain on my face. "But you called me. You asked me to come." "Yes. But things changed." His voice was low, almost apologetic. Almost. Just then, a small voice carried from the dining room. "Daddy, who is it?" My heart leapt. Noah, my sweet grandson. Surely he would run to the door, wrap his little arms around me, beg to let Grandma in. But Daniel's reply cut me in half. "No one important, son. Keep eating. No one important." The words sliced through me like a blade. My knees weakened, and for a moment I thought I might collapse onto the wet porch. No one important? After all the nights I had skipped meals so Daniel could have a full plate? After every dollar I poured into his tuition, every late bill I paid to keep his lights on, every grocery run, every mortgage payment? I was the reason that house stood behind him. And yet, to my son, to my grandson, I was invisible. I swallowed hard, my voice breaking. "Daniel, how could you say that?" He avoided my eyes. "Please, Mom, don't make this harder." Harder? Was this hard for him? For me, it was unbearable. I had dreamed of this night, of sitting at that table, hearing Noah's laughter. Up close, feeling like I still belonged. Instead, I was being erased, reduced to nothing more than an inconvenience. The door closed again. I stood on the porch, my breath catching in my throat, the rain dripping down my cheeks, mingling with tears I couldn't hold back any longer. I pressed my hand against the cold glass of the window, peering inside. Through the lace curtains I had once gifted Caroline, I saw the warmth of family life. Wine poured, forks lifted, Noah smiling at someone else's joke. My hand slid down the window as reality sank in. To them, I was not the mother who had sacrificed decades, not the woman who had made their comfort possible. I was simply no one important. The sound of laughter inside rose again, and in that laughter, I heard my place in their world. Outside. Always outside. But as the cold soaked into my bones, something else began to stir beneath the sorrow. A quiet ember of strength. If they wanted to treat me like I didn't matter, they had forgotten one crucial thing. That house, that mortgage, that roof above their heads, my name was still on the deed. And tomorrow, they would remember exactly how important I was. The sky opened wider, as if even the heavens wanted to test me. Sheets of rain poured down, soaking my maroon dress until it clung to me like a second skin. My shoes filled with water, each step squelching as I shifted from one foot to the other. I hugged the gift bags to my chest, though they offered no comfort. Only the steady disintegration of bright wrapping paper melting into pulp. 5 minutes passed. 10. An hour. The porch light flickered above me, casting my shivering figure onto the wet pavement like a shadow no one wanted to claim. I thought about leaving, about walking back to the bus stop, but the last one had already gone. And even if it hadn't, how could I leave without seeing my grandson? I had carried his gift across town, braved the cold air, prepared myself with so much care. No, I couldn't leave. Not yet. The laughter inside was relentless. Caroline's voice rose above the others, smooth and sharp like the clink of her wine. Glass. Every burst of cheer was another reminder of where I stood. Outside. Forgotten. 2 hours slipped by. My hair, once neatly styled, hung in dripping strands around my face. The pearl necklace at my throat felt icy against my skin. My hands were numb, my lips trembling as I whispered prayers to no one in particular. Please, just let me see him. Just let me see my grandson. As if in answer, a small shape appeared at the dining room window. Noah. His face pressed against the glass, round cheeks glowing in the chandelier's light. For a moment, time stopped. My heart leapt with hope. He saw me. My grandson saw me. I smiled through the tears, raising a shaky hand in greeting. "Grandma's here, sweetheart," I whispered, though I knew he couldn't hear. But after only a second, he pulled back. His little shoulders lifted in a shrug, and he turned away. Just like that, gone. Back to his plate of food, back to the warmth and comfort I wasn't allowed to share. The sight broke me in a way even Daniel's words hadn't. Because if my own grandson didn't fight for me, didn't cry out to let me in, then maybe I really had become invisible. The rain blurred the world around me, running down my face until I couldn't tell where the sky ended and my tears began. My maroon dress, once a symbol of pride, now sagged heavy and colorless, plastered to my thin frame. I clutched the ruined toy box, its cardboard peeling apart in my hands. The macarons had dissolved into a mushy mess inside their elegant box, a pitiful echo of love wasted. 3 hours, 180 minutes. I stood in that storm while my family feasted, while strangers toasted inside the house my money had helped build. And in those hours, the rain washed away more than my makeup, more than my dignity. It washed away the illusion I had carried for years that sacrifice was enough to earn respect, that love given without limits would someday be returned. By the time the clock struck 9, I no longer felt the cold. The pain in my chest burned hotter than the storm around me, and somewhere in that ache, a decision formed. Tomorrow, I promised myself, they would learn that I was not no one important. Tomorrow, the house they mocked me from would no longer be theirs to control. The rain had long since stopped feeling cold. After 3 hours, my body was numb, my skin raw, my spirit hollow. Still, I stood there, anchored to the porch like a forgotten statue. I told myself it was loyalty, or maybe stubbornness that kept me rooted in place. But deep down, it was the unbearable thought of walking away without dignity. Movement flickered behind the lace curtains. Caroline. She swept into view, elegant in her black dress, a glass of red wine balanced delicately in her hand. For a moment, I thought perhaps she had finally grown a conscience, that she was coming to let me in. Instead, she pulled the curtain aside and stared straight at me. Her eyes glimmered not with pity, but with satisfaction. She tilted her head, lips curling into a smile. Not a warm smile, not even a mocking grin. It was worse. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed seeing another person suffer. She raised her glass in a quiet toast to my misery, then let the curtain fall back into place. From inside, her voice carried clear through the rain. "She's still out there," she told one of her guests with a chuckle. "Like an abandoned dog." The room erupted in laughter. An abandoned dog. The words echoed in my ears, louder than the thunder rolling in the distance. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. For 68 years I had worked, sacrificed, endured. I had given my son a future, helped build this very house. And now, in front of strangers, my daughter-in-law reduced me to a stray animal, left to shiver in the storm. I closed my eyes. In that darkness, I saw flashes of my past, my young hands scrubbing floors, my weary body carrying laundry baskets, my tired smile as I slipped a few dollars into Daniel's pocket so he could have lunch money. None of it mattered to them now. None of it made me more than a burden. But something else rose within me, stronger than the humiliation. Anger. A clean, sharp anger that cut through the numbness and lit a fire deep in my chest. If they wanted to see me as powerless, they had forgotten one very important detail. With trembling fingers, I pulled my phone from my soaked purse. The screen fogged with raindrops, but I unlocked it by muscle memory. My thumb hovered over a familiar contact. My lawyer. A man I had trusted for years, the one who had advised me never to give up my co-ownership of the house, no matter how much, Daniel begged. My name was still on the deed. Legally, this house wasn't just theirs, it was mine. And that piece of paper, signed years ago, gave me more power than they ever imagined. Caroline thought she was watching a broken woman. But as I stood in the rain, drenched and humiliated, I smiled for the first time that night, because the storm outside wasn't the only storm brewing. Tonight, everything changed. The rain slowed to a drizzle as I made my way home that night, but the storm inside me only grew stronger. I shed my soaked dress, wrapped myself in a blanket, and sat at my kitchen table with the phone clutched in my hand. For hours I stared at the glowing screen, replaying Caroline's words. An abandoned dog. They thought they had stripped me of dignity. They thought I was powerless. But they had forgotten one crucial truth. This was not their house. Not fully. It was mine, too. I remembered the day Daniel first brought me the paperwork. He and Caroline had been newly married, wide-eyed, and eager to move into a place they could call their own. But their savings weren't enough. His job was steady but modest. Her ambitions high but her pockets empty. The bank wouldn't approve the mortgage unless someone with more assets co-signed. "Mom, we just need your name on the deed," Daniel had said, his voice pleading. "You won't have to pay anything. It's just a formality." But of course, it hadn't been just my name. It had been my money, too. The down payment came from my life savings. 40 years of scrubbing floors, baking bread, taking in laundry until my hands bled. I told myself it was worth it. My boy deserved stability. My grandson deserved a safe home. So I signed the papers, placed my trust in family, and handed over a future I had built with sweat and sacrifice. From that day forward, they treated me like a guest, a visitor, someone to tolerate on holidays, someone to keep at arm's length. They forgot, or maybe chose to ignore, that my name sat beside theirs on every legal document. I leaned back in my chair now, whispering the truth aloud for the first time. They thought I was just a guest. They forgot I was the landlord. I unlocked my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in years, Mr. Davis, attorney at law. He was a patient man, kind but firm, the one who had told me at closing, "Never give up your share, Helen. It's your protection." My fingers trembled as I pressed the call button. He answered after 2 rings. "Mrs. Harris, it's been a while." "Yes, Mr. Davis," I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "I need to discuss my rights as co-owner of my son's house." There was a pause, then a cautious tone. "Has something happened?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Something happened tonight that made me realize I am done being treated like a burden. I want to activate the clause you once mentioned, the one that allows me to reclaim my share of the property if I choose." Silence followed, then a thoughtful hum. "You're within your rights. You provided the down payment, and your name remains on the deed. Legally, you're not a guest. You're an equal owner. If you want, we can begin proceedings tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word lit something inside me. "Yes," I replied firmly. "Do it. I want every document drawn, every notice prepared. By sunrise, my son and his wife will remember whose roof they're living under." He confirmed the details, promised to send papers to my email within the hour, and ended the call. I sat there in the quiet, the clock ticking past midnight. For the first time in years, I didn't feel weak or invisible. I felt powerful. They had left me out in the rain like a beggar. But tomorrow, I would walk back to that house not as a guest begging for warmth, but as its owner. Morning sunlight spilled through my kitchen window, warming the steam rising from my cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I sipped it slowly, without dread of another request for money, another guilt-soaked favor. The night's decision sat like armor around me. My name was still on the deed, and now the house wasn't just theirs. It was mine to reclaim. By 9 o'clock, the peace shattered. My phone buzzed violently on the table. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. "Mom! What did you do?" His voice came through frantic, sharp with panic. I set my cup down gently, refusing to match his tone. "Good morning, Daniel. Did you sleep well?" "Don't play games with me." The bank called. The mortgage payment didn't go through. The account's frozen. Caroline tried to use the card this morning, and it was declined in front of everyone. At the store. "What is going on?" I let the silence hang for a moment, letting him taste the weight of it. "What's going on," I said softly, "is that I remembered whose name is on your house. And I decided last night that the disrespect ends here." "Mom, this isn't funny. We have bills. Leo's school tuition is due next week. The utilities, none of that," I interrupted firmly, "is my problem anymore. You closed the door on me last night. You told your son his grandmother was no one important. Well, today, you learn exactly how important I am." There was a muffled sound, Caroline's voice rising in the background. "Ask her what she wants. Ask her now." Daniel lowered his voice, almost pleading. "Mom, please. Caroline is furious. We can fix this if you just—" I straightened in my chair, my voice calm, steady. "Fix this? Daniel, you don't fix years of humiliation with empty apologies. From today forward, you live under my rules, or not at all." "What rules?" His tone was a mix of anger and desperation. "Respect," I answered simply. "Basic respect. When I come to the house, I am welcomed, not left in the rain. When I speak, I am heard, not mocked. And when I give, it is appreciated, not treated like entitlement. If those rules are too hard for you and your wife, then you can find another way to pay for that big house." There was a long silence on the line. I could almost hear him weighing his choices, torn between his pride and his panic. Finally, his voice cracked. "Mom, please. Leo. He doesn't understand what's happening. He's crying. He keeps asking why you won't come over." My throat tightened, but I forced my resolve to hold. Leo is innocent, and I love him. But I will not keep sacrificing my dignity just to keep your wife comfortable. Caroline has spent years treating me like a burden. Last night she compared me to an abandoned dog. You stood by and let it happen. That ends today. Caroline's voice burst through in the background. "Tell her she can't do this." "Tell her we'll fight her," I almost laughed. "Fight me? On what grounds? The bank knows my name. The deed shows my name. If you want this house, you'd better learn that it comes with me." Daniel sighed, beaten down. "So what do you want? From us?" "I don't want your tears. I don't want excuses. I want a choice." My voice sharpened. "Either you live by my rules or you pack your bags. Goodbye, Caroline." And with that, I ended the call. For the first time in years, I felt the Paksai balance of power shift. Not from cruelty, but from clarity. They thought I needed them. But the truth was, they had always needed me. By late afternoon, they showed up at my apartment. I knew they would. Pride can only last so long when bills pile up and cards are declined. The knock rattled the door, sharp and impatient. I opened it slowly, and there they stood. Daniel, shoulders slumped, and Caroline, arms crossed tight against her chest, her eyes blazing. "Mom, we need to talk," Daniel began. I stepped aside. "Then come in. But understand, this isn't going to be the kind of talk you're used to." Caroline brushed past me first, her heels clicking angrily against my linoleum floor. Daniel followed, carrying the weight of a man caught between two storms. We sat at the kitchen table where so many of my sacrifices had once begun. Me baking cookies to sell, rolling coins into wrappers to pay bills. This time, though, the air was different. I wasn't the tired mother begging to keep things afloat. I was the owner of the house they thought was theirs. Caroline spoke first, her voice sharp. "What you did this morning was outrageous. Freezing the accounts? Blocking the mortgage? You can't just hold us hostage." I leaned forward, folding my hands, calm as still water. "I can, Caroline. Because legally, that house belongs as much to me as it does to you. And after last night, I decided I will no longer bankroll my own humiliation." Daniel tried to mediate. "Mom, please. Let's just calm down and figure out a solution." "I already have one," I said firmly. "It's called rules. And if you want to stay in that house, you'll follow them," Caroline scoffed. "Rules? We're not children." "Then act like adults," I shot back. "Because the way you've been living, off my savings, my pension, my sacrifices, looks more like freeloading than adulthood." Her face reddened. Daniel looked down, ashamed. I continued, my voice steady, each word deliberate. "Rule number 1, respect. When I come to that house, I am welcomed, not left outside like a stray. I will not be mocked, ignored, or shut out again." Daniel nodded faintly, his lips pressed together. Caroline rolled her eyes. "Rule number 2, responsibility. You, Daniel, will start handling your own bills. No more calling me for grocery money, gas money, or tuition fees. If you want your lifestyle, you'll earn it. He opened his mouth to protest, but I raised a hand. Rule number 3, Caroline will work. You're a grown woman, perfectly capable of earning a paycheck. From now on, if you want designer clothes or fancy dinners, you'll pay for them. Yourself. Caroline's mouth dropped open as if I'd slapped her. Excuse me, I'm Noah's mother. My job is at home. I met her glare with quiet steel. No, your job is to contribute. I raised a child while working 3 jobs, Caroline. Don't tell me it can't be done. It will be done, or you'll learn what it means to live without the comforts my money has provided. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, but I pressed on. Rule number 4, no more freeloading luxuries. Vacations, expensive schools, endless extras. All of it ends unless you pay for it. You will live within your means, not mine. Caroline's voice rose, shaking with anger. This is insane. You can't just dictate our lives. I smiled faintly. Yes, I can. Because without me, you don't have a life as you know it. You don't have that house. You don't have those comforts. You either live under my rules, or you walk away. The room fell silent. Caroline's chest heaved as though she might explode. Daniel sat frozen, torn between loyalty and shame. And me? For the first time in years, I felt no fear, only power. Calm, controlled, undeniable power. The silence in my kitchen stretched long, heavy as stone. Caroline's eyes darted toward Daniel, desperate for him to speak, to defend her. But he stayed quiet, staring at his hands like a child caught cheating on a test. At last, Caroline slammed, her palm against the table. This is ridiculous. You think you can control us with your money? With some old deed? We're a family, Helen. Families don't treat each other like this. Her words rang hollow. The same woman who had left me in the rain, called me manipulative, mocked me as an abandoned dog, now dared to cry family. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. If you want to stay in that house, you will apologize. Not a quick sorry to smooth things over. A real apology. On your knees. Her mouth fell open. What? That's humiliating. I met her fury with calm steel. So was standing outside, in the rain for 3 hours while my own son told his child I was no one important. So was hearing you laugh at me with your friends. So was being compared to a stray animal outside the very house I helped buy. If you want to keep living there, you will kneel and admit every word you said. Caroline shot to her feet, trembling. Daniel, say something. Daniel raised his head, his eyes filled with shame. Caroline, Mom's right. We crossed a line last night. If this is what it takes, just do it. Her face twisted in disbelief. You expect me to kneel? In front of her? In front of you? Yes, he said quietly. For a long moment she stood frozen, pride and desperation battling in her eyes. Then, with a sharp breath, she lowered herself to the floor. Her knees hit the cold linoleum with a dull thud. The sound echoed through the room, sweeter to me than any apology could ever be. Caroline's voice trembled. Helen, I apologize for leaving you outside last night. I shook my head. Not enough. Say it all. Her eyes blazed with humiliation, but she pressed on. Each word dragged out like a confession. I apologize for calling you manipulative, for saying you were making theater, for comparing you to an abandoned dog, for saying you were a burden, for mocking you in front of my friends. Tears streaked her cheeks, mascara running in dark lines. I'm sorry, she whispered. I leaned forward, my voice steady. And will it happen again? She shook her head fiercely. No, never again. Say it, I pressed. It will never happen again, she choked, her voice cracking, under the weight of the words. For the first time, I let a small smile curve my lips. Good, now get up. Caroline rose slowly, brushing dust from her knees, her pride shattered. Daniel sat motionless, staring at the scene with wide, conflicted eyes. The power dynamic had shifted. Forever. I stood, straightening my back, my voice calm and unshaken. From this day forward, Caroline, you will remember exactly who I am. Not your scapegoat, not your servant, but the woman who holds the keys to your comfort. Disrespect me once more, and you will lose it all. For once, she didn't answer, and for the first time in years, I felt seen. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. No calls for money, no text messages begging for just a little transfer. Silence. For me, that silence was golden. For them, it was the sound of reality setting in. By the end of the week, Caroline's mask began to crack. She showed up at my apartment, not with her usual polished hair and designer coat, but in jeans and a wrinkled blouse. She looked smaller somehow, as though the weight of responsibility had shrunk her. She didn't sit down. She paced my kitchen like a caged animal. Helen, this is impossible. Leo's school sent home another tuition reminder. The credit cards are maxed. We can't live like this. I sipped my tea calmly. Millions of families live without private schools, without fancy cars, without endless luxuries. You'll live too. Her mouth twisted. But we're not like those people. Daniel has a reputation. I have a reputation. I cut her off, my tone sharp. A reputation built on my savings. That ends now. You'll either adjust or you'll drown in your pride. She went quiet, her lips pressed thin. She left without another word. It didn't take long before the changes became visible. The sleek SUV they once drove everywhere was traded for a used sedan. Their weekly dinners at expensive restaurants vanished. Caroline stopped showing up in brand new dresses and instead recycled old outfits. Even Noah, sweet boy, started asking questions Daniel couldn't answer. Daddy, why can't I go to piano lessons anymore? Why isn't Grandma paying? Daniel tried to explain gently, but I knew the truth was finally sinking in. He was starting to see his wife's fury not as loyalty, but as entitlement. One evening, he came to see me alone. He sat at my kitchen table, his hands wrapped around the chipped mug of coffee I had offered him. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, his voice low. Mom, he said, I didn't realize how much we depended on you. Caroline's been different, angry. She keeps saying we can't live like this, that she married me for stability. She's not the same person I thought she was. I placed my hand over his, steady and firm. She hasn't changed, Daniel. You've just finally taken away the cushion that allowed her to hide it. His eyes filled with shame. I should have defended you that night. I should have stopped her. I nodded slowly. Yes, but you didn't. And now you're learning the hardest lesson of all. Respect is worth more than comfort. And once lost, it's not easily given back. We sat in silence, the only sound the ticking of my old clock. For the first time, I saw my son as a man stripped bare of excuses. He was beginning to see me not as a safety net, but as the mother who had sacrificed everything. As for me, I felt no guilt for his struggle, none at all. For decades, I had bent until I nearly broke. but for the first time in my life, I had boundaries. And I was watching them hold. I looked out my window that night, watching the rain drizzle against the glass, and I whispered to myself, steady and certain, "This is what dignity feels like." It was a Sunday evening when Daniel knocked on my door again. This time, there was no anger in his voice, no panic in his fists. Just a soft, hesitant tap, like the boy he once was, asking permission instead of demanding. I opened the door and found him standing there alone. No Caroline, no Noah. His shoulders slumped, his tie loosened, his face older than his 40 years. "Mom," he said quietly. "Can I come in?" I nodded and led him to the kitchen. He sat at the table where he'd eaten countless bowls of soup as a boy, where I'd bandaged his scraped knees, where I'd counted pennies to make sure he had lunch money. Now he sat there with his head bowed, as though the weight of the world pressed down on him. We sat in silence for a moment before he spoke. "Caroline." He shook his head. "She hasn't stopped complaining. She keeps saying I failed her, that without your money, she wouldn't have married me in the first place." My chest tightened, but I said nothing. "I wanted to hear the words from his own lips," she said. He continued, his voice breaking, "that her friends always laughed behind our backs, that I wasn't a provider, that I was just a man living off his mother." The shame in his eyes cut deeper than any insult Caroline had thrown at me. This was my son, the boy I had raised to be kind, to be proud, and now he was broken, not just by her cruelty, but by his own blindness. "Mom," he whispered, "I think I made a terrible mistake marrying her." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his trembling fingers. "Son, sometimes love blinds us. Sometimes pride blinds us even more. The question isn't whether you made a mistake. The question is, what will you do now that you see the truth?" Tears welled in his eyes. For years, Daniel had been distant, always too busy, always too tired. Now he looked at me with the raw honesty of a child again. "I should have defended you that night. I should have stood between you and her, not let her speak to you that way. You stood in the rain because I didn't have the courage to stand up for you. I'll never forgive myself for that." I squeezed his hand gently. "Daniel, I waited a long time to hear those words. Longer than you know. But I don't need you to carry guilt. I need you to grow from it." He wiped his eyes, nodding. "I see you now, Mom. For the first time in years, I really see you. Everything you did for me. Everything you sacrificed. And I treated you like you were nothing." The ache in my heart eased as I looked at him. Not the man weighed down by shame, but my son, the boy who once promised to take care of me when he grew up. Maybe, just maybe, that promise wasn't lost. I stood and moved around the table, wrapping my arms around his shoulders. He buried his face against me, and for the first time since he was a child, he cried in my arms. "It's not too late," I whispered into his hair. "We can rebuild. But from now on, Daniel, it has to be built on respect, not on money." He nodded, his voice muffled but certain. "I promise, Mom. No more silence. No more letting her hurt you. You'll never stand outside that door again." For the first time in years, I believed him. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had my son back. It didn't take long for the last mask to fall. A week after Daniel's visit, the phone rang again, Caroline's voice sharp, panicked. "Helen, the bank sent another notice. The mortgage is overdue. If you don't unfreeze the accounts, we'll Lose the house. I steadied my voice, calm as a stone in the river. Caroline, you already lost the house. You just don't realize it yet. My lawyer has filed the papers. By law, I'm reclaiming my share. You'll be receiving the notice within days. Her gasp was sharp, indignant. You can't. This is my home. No, I replied, steady and clear. It's my home. Always has been. You just forgot whose name was on the deed. There was no more shouting after that. Just silence. The silence of a woman who had run out of weapons. 3 days later, Daniel came to me with Noah, in tow and a small suitcase in his hand. His eyes were tired, but his jaw was set with a quiet strength. Mom, he said, we're ready. We can't live like that anymore. I opened the door wide and let them in. The sight of Noah running to my arms nearly broke me. He clung to me tightly, whispering, Grandma, I don't want you to be outside anymore. I want to live with you. My heart swelled. You are safe here, sweetheart. Always. Daniel set the suitcase down by the sofa. Caroline refused to leave the house with us. She said if she can't live in luxury, she won't live with me at all. She wants a divorce. I studied his face, searching for regret, for sorrow. But instead, I saw relief. And how do you feel about that, son? He let out a breath that seemed to carry years of burden. Like I can finally breathe. That night, the three of us shared a simple meal in my small kitchen. Bread, soup, nothing fancy. But there was laughter. Genuine laughter. Noah told silly jokes, Daniel joined in, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like a mother again, a grandmother, the center of a family that mattered. The next week, the court papers arrived. Caroline signed without protest, her pride too brittle to survive without luxury. She walked away with nothing but her wardrobe and her bitterness. And I, the woman she once mocked as a manipulative burden, stood stronger than ever. My apartment was small, but it became a home filled with warmth. Noah's school changed, but he adjusted quickly, surprising us all with how resilient a child can be when surrounded by love instead of tension. Daniel found extra shifts, working harder than I'd ever seen him. Each night he came home tired but grateful, thanking me for dinner, for support, for giving him a second chance. One evening, as Noah drifted off to sleep, Daniel sat beside me on the balcony. He stared out at the city lights and whispered, Mom, I thought losing the house would be the end of us, but I see now. It was the beginning. Thank you for saving me from a life that wasn't real. I reached for his hand, holding it tightly. No, Daniel, thank you for finally seeing me, for finally respecting me. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was quiet and complete. Watching Caroline walk away, watching my son and grandson step into my home with open hearts, that was all the revenge I needed. And as the cool night air brushed against my skin, I realized something. I hadn't just reclaimed a house. I had reclaimed my family, my dignity, and my peace. For the first time in decades, I was home. 5 years have passed since that night in the rain. 5 years since I stood outside a house I had helped buy, shivering and humiliated, only to remember that I was not powerless. And in those 5 years, my life has changed in ways I never imagined. Daniel is no longer the tired, broken man who once hid behind his wife's cruelty. He has rebuilt himself piece by piece, learning responsibility the hard way. Today, he manages his own team at work, earning respect not because of my money, but because of his own effort. He visits me often, not out of guilt or obligation, but out of genuine love. We share dinners, laughter, and long talks that remind me of when he was a boy with wide eyes and endless questions. As for Noah, my sweet grandson, he has flourished. Public school didn't dim his light. It made him stronger. He learned resilience, kindness, and humility. At 13 now, he's thoughtful beyond his years. Sometimes he hugs me tight and says, "Grandma, you're the strongest woman I know." And every time, my heart melts. He doesn't remember me as the grandmother left in the rain. He remembers me as the grandmother who said enough and changed all of our lives. And me? I live in peace. My apartment is modest, but it is filled with warmth. I planted flowers on the balcony, the kind my mother once grew, and every spring their blossoms remind me that new beginnings are always possible. My savings, no longer drained, have grown. I even traveled for the first time in my life, standing on the sandy beaches of Hawaii, feeling the ocean breeze against my face. For years, I thought those dreams were for other people. Now I know. They were waiting for me to claim them. Word of my story spread further than I ever expected. At first it was whispers in the neighborhood. "Did you hear what Helen did? She stood up to her family. She took her house back." Soon, women began coming to me quietly. Neighbors, church members, even strangers. They sat at my kitchen table, voices trembling, stories spilling out about children who drained their savings, relatives who disrespected them, families who thought love meant endless sacrifice. I told them what I had learned, that love without respect is not love at all, that giving without boundaries is not generosity but servitude, and that dignity is worth more than any roof or bank account. We began meeting regularly, a circle of women supporting one another. Some call it a group, others a movement. I just call it family, the kind of family built not on blood, but on courage. Every time I see one of those women walk a little taller, speak a little firmer, I feel a quiet pride. My pain became their lesson. My decision became their strength. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that rainy evening, the porch light glowing, the laughter inside, the sting of being called no one important. And then I think of what followed. The strength I found, the power I claimed, the life I built. They thought they had broken me. But in truth, they had freed me. As I sit here now, watching Noah kick a soccer ball in the courtyard, hearing Daniel laugh from the kitchen, I know one thing for certain. I am not a victim. I am not a burden. I am a woman who stood up for herself and changed her story. They thought I was just a guest in their house, but I was the owner of my dignity, and that was something no one could take from me.